Millionaire CEO finds a baby on his doorstep, the note attached, makes him call 911. It was an ordinary Thursday evening in Manhattan, a city that never slept. Yet, for Ethan Blackwood, it felt as though his world was about to come to an end. The towering skyscrapers that marked the skyline of New York were bathed in the amber glow of the setting sun. But for Ethan, it felt like the darkness had already started creeping in. As the CEO of Blackwood Technologies, one of the largest tech companies in the country, Ethan's days were filled with meetings, deadlines, and constant pressure. He had grown used to it. The long hours, the constant demands, and the ever-present need to stay ahead of the competition. But tonight, something felt different. It wasn't just another business day. It was a moment that would change his life forever. Ethan had just returned to his luxury penthouse in the heart of Manhattan. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and he stepped out into the lobby, glancing briefly at the framed paintings that decorated the walls. His apartment was on the top floor, the pinnacle of luxury with a view that stretched all the way to the Statue of Liberty. It was the kind of place that most people only dreamed of: expensive furniture, sleek lines, and a sense of detachment from the world below. But tonight, it felt empty. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. The familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee still lingered in the air from his earlier morning. His assistant, Claire, had left a stack of documents on his desk, but Ethan wasn't interested in work right now. He felt drained, both physically and emotionally. He tossed his keys onto the side table and moved toward the kitchen, grabbing a glass of water. As he turned, he heard something, a soft sound, like a muffled cry coming from the hallway. Confused, Ethan walked toward the source of the sound. He thought it was just his mind playing tricks on him, the kind of exhaustion that led to strange hallucinations. But as he rounded the corner, his heart stopped. There, on the doorstep of his apartment, sat a small baby carrier. It was a simple white carrier, the kind he had seen countless times in baby stores. But what caught his attention was the note attached to it. He knelt down, his hand trembling as he reached for the note. It was neatly folded, the handwriting clear and deliberate. The note read, "This is your child. Don't trust anyone, especially the ones who are closest to you. Call 911 immediately." Ethan felt a rush of confusion and disbelief flood his body. He looked down at the baby, who appeared to be no more than a few months old. The child's eyes were closed, peaceful, as if unaware of the chaos that was unfolding around them. Ethan had never seen this child before. He didn't even know if it was a boy or a girl. But something in his gut told him that this was no ordinary situation. The note felt too personal, too urgent. The words were like a punch to the stomach, making him question everything about his life. For a moment, Ethan stood frozen, his mind racing. What was going on? Who could have left this child at his door? The note had made it clear that there was a connection that Ethan couldn't understand. He didn't have any children. He wasn't married. His relationships were fleeting, casual affairs with no one serious enough to leave him with a child. Yet here it was. A baby that was somehow tied to him, left in the care of the very person least prepared to raise a child. Ethan's fingers hovered over the phone, but he hesitated. Calling 911 seemed like the only logical choice, but at the same time he couldn't bring himself to do it. The note had warned him to call, yet there was a voice in his head that told him to wait. What if this was a prank? What if this was some elaborate scheme designed to throw him off course, to distract him from something bigger? He had no enemies, at least none that he knew of, but the message was clear. Don't trust anyone. The thought of calling the authorities only deepened his sense of unease. Who would believe him if he said a baby had been left on his doorstep with a cryptic note? And why had they chosen him? What was the real story behind this child? His mind spun with possibilities. each one more outlandish than the last. Was this some sort of test, or worse, a threat? But no matter how much he tried to rationalize the situation, the baby remained there, still quiet and entirely dependent on him. Ethan swallowed hard and forced himself to take action. With a steadying breath, he reached for his phone and dialed 911. 911? What's your emergency? The operator's voice was calm but urgent. Ethan's voice trembled as he spoke. I found a baby on my doorstep. There's a note with it, and it says the child is mine. The operator's tone was calm, but there was an edge of urgency in her voice as she asked for his address. Ethan gave it to her, and she assured him that officers would be dispatched immediately. He hung up the phone, his body still in a state of shock, and turned back to the baby. It felt like time had stopped. The sound of the city outside his windows, the hustle and bustle of Manhattan, seemed distant now, like it was happening on another planet. As he sat down on the floor beside the baby, Ethan couldn't help but feel the weight of the moment. He had always prided himself on his ability to solve problems, to stay in control. But this was something entirely different. There were no answers here, only questions, and the only thing he knew for certain was that his life would never be the same again. He glanced at the baby one last time before hearing the sound of sirens approaching in the distance. The authorities were on their way, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. He had no idea what he was about to uncover, but he knew one thing for sure. His life had just taken an unimaginable turn. The night seemed to stretch on forever for Ethan Blackwood. He sat in his immaculate penthouse, the sounds of the city's nightlife filtering through the windows, but it felt as though the world outside had ceased to exist. The baby, now wrapped in a warm blanket, slept peacefully on the coffee table, an innocent reminder of the chaos that had entered his life in the most unexpected way. The officers had arrived not long after his 911 call, their presence official and reassuring. But the questions they asked only deepened the mystery. Detective Maria Gonzalez had been the first to speak when she entered his apartment. Tall, composed, and with a no-nonsense attitude, she had immediately taken charge of the situation. The baby was checked for any signs of harm, and a preliminary investigation began. But it was clear from the start that this wasn't just an ordinary case. The cryptic note, the urgency in its words, and the claim that this child was his, it all felt too surreal to comprehend. "Do you recognize this child, Mr. Blackwood?" Detective Gonzalez asked, her eyes fixed on him with an intensity that suggested she was trying to read him like a book. Ethan shook his head, disbelief clouding his thoughts. "No, I don't. I've never seen this baby before, and I certainly didn't know anything about this child." The detective didn't say much after that. Instead, she looked at the baby and then at Ethan, as if weighing the situation in her mind. "We'll take the child to the hospital for a checkup. It's standard procedure, but I'm going to need you to come down to the station with us. We need to get your statement and figure out where this baby came from." Ethan agreed, still unsure of what was happening. What could he say? He hadn't a clue about this child's origin, and the note only seemed to complicate things further. It wasn't just the words that disturbed him, it was the implication that someone knew him, or at least knew about him in a way that wasn't just coincidental. The warning in the note felt too precise, too deliberate, to be a random act. He reluctantly followed the officers to the precinct, where the interrogation room felt colder than it should have been. As they waited for the paperwork to be processed, Ethan's mind raced. The life he had worked so hard to build, the high-rise office, the prestigious company, the reputation he had carefully crafted, was beginning to crumble. It wasn't just the child, it was the note's warning that sent a chill down his spine. Don't trust anyone. Detective Gonzalez gave him a look, one that suggested she wasn't convinced by his story. "Tell me again, Mr. Blackwood. Do you have any enemies? Anyone who might have a reason to target you? The question took him by surprise. Ethan had always thought of himself as a businessman, focused solely on expanding his company. Sure, there were competitors, but none that had ever posed a real threat to him, at least not in a personal way. The cutthroat world of tech wasn't kind, but he had always believed that he kept his dealings above board. "No, I don't think so," he replied, his voice betraying his unease. "I mean, there's always the occasional corporate rivalry, but no one who would go to these lengths. This is something else. This feels personal." The detective pressed on, her questions more pointed now. "Is there anyone in your life who might know something about this? A woman, perhaps? Someone who might have had a relationship with you?" Ethan's heart skipped a beat at the mention of woman. His mind flickered to an old memory, one he had buried deep within the recesses of his mind. Her name was Lauren. They had met years ago, back when he was still figuring out what he wanted from life. Lauren had been different from the others, smart, independent, and charming in a way that drew him in. Their relationship had been brief but intense, and it ended just as quickly as it had started. He had never heard from her again, not until this moment. The thought of her reappeared, unbidden and unsettling. I did have a relationship with someone a while ago," Ethan said slowly, trying to piece together the fragments of his past. "Her name was Lauren. We were close for a while, but it ended. There was no contact after that. I haven't seen or heard from her in years." Detective Gonzalez's eyes narrowed. "Lauren, you say? Do you know where she is now, or where she might be?" Ethan shook his head, the uncertainty clouding his thoughts. "No, she just disappeared. I tried reaching out a few times after, but nothing. There was no response." There was a long pause before the detective spoke again. "I think it's time we find Lauren. If this baby is yours, and if someone's out to get you, then we need to talk to her. She may know something we don't." Ethan was left in a daze as the detective made her call. His mind raced with 1,000 possibilities, all of them dangerous. What if this was Lauren's child? What if the baby wasn't just a coincidence? The thought haunted him as he sat across from Detective Gonzalez, trying to make sense of it all. The life he had worked so hard to build was beginning to unravel, and he had no idea what lay ahead. Ethan stood there in shock, processing Lauren's words, but nothing seemed to make sense. She had just revealed that the baby was his, and yet the situation felt more complicated than ever. He barely knew what to believe anymore. Was she lying, or was she telling the truth? His mind raced with questions, but the one thing that seemed clear was that he couldn't just walk away. There was too much at stake now, and whatever danger Lauren had hinted at was real. Detective Gonzalez, sensing the tension in the room, cleared her throat. "Mr. Blackwood, I think we need to move past the shock for a moment. We need answers, and you need to know exactly what you're dealing with here." Ethan nodded, still reeling from the bombshell Lauren had dropped on him. "What do you mean by, 'they're threatening me,' Lauren?" He could hardly bring himself to ask, but he needed to know. Lauren shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting around the small, dimly lit apartment. She seemed afraid to speak, but at the same time there was a sense of urgency in her voice when she finally responded. "There's a man, Ethan. He's been following me for months now. He knows about the baby, and he made it clear that if I didn't follow his instructions, something would happen to both of us." Her voice cracked as she spoke, and Ethan could see the pain in her eyes. "Who is he?" Ethan demanded, his frustration growing. "What does he want with us?" Lauren took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she wiped away a stray tear. "His name is Richard Vaughn. He's involved in some illegal business. He's dangerous. I didn't know how to get away from him. I thought if I just kept my head down and stayed out of his way, I could protect myself, but—" She paused, the weight of her words sinking in. "I should have told you sooner, Ethan. I didn't want you to get involved, but now I don't know what else to do." Ethan's mind was spinning. Richard Vaughn. The name didn't mean anything to him, But the fear in Lauren's eyes told him all he needed to know. Whoever this man was, he was someone to be feared. Ethan clenched his fists, trying to steady his thoughts. What does he want from us? What did he tell you to do? Lauren's voice dropped to a whisper. He said I needed to make sure the baby was taken care of, that no one could know the truth. He wanted me to keep quiet and stay out of sight. He said if I didn't, he would come after me and you. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He had no idea who this Richard Vaughn was, but the fact that he had been using Lauren to manipulate and control her, and now was threatening him and his child, was too much to ignore. This has gone too far, Ethan muttered, his voice low and filled with determination. We need to get out of here. You're not staying here any longer, Lauren. Lauren shook her head, her eyes wide with fear. No, Ethan, you don't understand. If I leave, if I go to the police again, he'll find us. He'll hurt us. I've tried everything I could think of, but he always seems to be one step ahead. He has people watching me, watching you. The air in the apartment felt thick with tension. Ethan's mind raced. He wasn't going to sit back and let some criminal tear apart his life. There was too much at risk. He thought about the baby again, the little girl he barely knew, but was now a part of his life. In an instant, he wasn't going to let anyone hurt her, and certainly not Lauren, no matter how complicated their past had been. Okay, he said, his voice steadying. We're going to get out of here. Lauren looked at him, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and hope. But Ethan, he'll find us. He always does. Ethan's jaw set with determination. Not this time. We'll be smarter. We'll stay one step ahead of him. Detective Gonzalez, we need your help. We need to get Lauren and the baby to a safe place, somewhere Vaughn can't find them. Detective Gonzalez nodded, her expression serious. I'll arrange for a safe house. But we need to move quickly. Pack only what you need, Lauren. We'll leave as soon as possible. Lauren nodded, her eyes filled with tears. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you for believing me. Ethan reached out, taking her hand in his. We'll get through this, Lauren. Together. As they hurriedly packed a few essentials, Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of purpose. He had always been a man of action, and now he had a mission, to protect Lauren and their child from the danger that threatened them. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to see it through. The drive back to Manhattan was tense. Ethan's mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, each one more urgent than the last. He glanced at Lauren in the rearview mirror, her face pale and her eyes filled with fear. Detective Gonzalez sat in the passenger seat, her phone pressed to her ear as she coordinated with her team to set up a safe house. We'll be there in 10 minutes, Detective Gonzalez said, hanging up the phone. The safe house is ready. We'll have officers stationed outside to keep watch. Ethan nodded, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. Good. We need to make sure Lauren and the baby are safe. Lauren looked up, her eyes meeting Ethan's in the mirror. Thank you, Ethan. I don't know what I would have done without you. Ethan's heart softened. You don't have to thank me, Lauren. We're in this together. As they pulled up to the safe house, a nondescript building in a quiet neighborhood, Ethan felt a sense of relief. They hurried inside, and Detective Gonzalez gave them a quick tour of the place. There are cameras and alarms set up around the perimeter. You'll be safe here. Lauren nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Detective. Detective Gonzalez smiled softly. Just doing my job. Now let's get you settled in. Ethan, I need to speak with you for a moment. Ethan followed the detective into the kitchen, his mind still racing. What is it? Detective Gonzalez's expression was serious. We need to find out more about Richard Vaughn. I've put a team on it, but we need to be careful. He's dangerous, and he has resources. We can't underestimate him. Ethan nodded, his jaw set with determination. I understand. What do you need from me? I need you to stay here with Lauren and the baby. Keep them safe. My team and I will handle the investigation. We'll find Vaughn and put an end to this. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He knew he couldn't just sit back and do nothing, but he also knew that Lauren and the baby needed him. Okay, I'll stay here, but keep me updated. I need to know what's going on. Detective Gonzalez nodded. I will. Now go be with Lauren. She needs you. Ethan returned to the living room, where Lauren was sitting on the couch, her arms wrapped around herself. He sat down beside her, taking her hand in his. We're going to be okay, Lauren. I promise. Lauren looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. I hope so, Ethan. I hope so. As they sat there hand in hand, Ethan knew that this was just the beginning of a long and dangerous journey. But he was determined to see it through, no matter what it took. He would protect Lauren and their child, and he would bring Richard Vaughn to justice. The sun had barely begun to rise the following morning when Ethan woke up to the sound of his phone buzzing on the nightstand. He squinted at the clock. It was still early, too early for anything significant. He glanced at Lauren, who was curled up on the couch with the baby still asleep in her arms. He hesitated for a moment before picking up the phone, his mind racing with the possibilities of who could be calling at this hour. The number on the screen was unfamiliar, but the area code matched the one from the city where he had grown up. His heart skipped a beat as he answered the call. Hello? Ethan, it's Detective Gonzalez, came the voice from the other end, calm but tinged with urgency. I need you to listen carefully. Ethan's mind instantly sharpened. He motioned for Lauren to stay quiet, his gaze fixed on her as she stirred slightly. What's going on? He asked, his voice steady, despite the rising tension inside him. I need you to meet me in person, Gonzalez said. It's important. I can't explain everything over the phone, but I've uncovered something about Vaughn, something that puts you both at risk. Ethan felt his stomach tighten at the mention of Vaughn. He knew that the investigation had been progressing, but hearing that something new had come to light made him anxious. Where do you want to meet? I'll text you the address. It's a diner on the edge of town. Get there as quickly as you can. Understood, Ethan replied, already standing up and dressing quickly. He glanced back at Lauren, who was still adjusting to the morning light. He walked over to her, keeping his voice low as he spoke. Lauren, I have to go. It's about Vaughn. Detective Gonzalez has information for us. Lauren's eyes widened, her hands gripping the baby a little tighter. You're going alone? She asked, her voice filled with concern. Ethan nodded, his face hardening. I'll be fine. Just stay here and keep the baby safe. I'll be back soon. Lauren didn't say anything at first, but the look on her face told him everything he needed to know. She wasn't sure whether to trust that he would be okay or if she should come with him. But he couldn't risk putting her in danger, not when they were so close to finding answers. He left the safe house quietly, the early morning chill biting at his skin as he made his way to the car. The drive to the diner was tense, his mind spinning with questions about what the detective could have uncovered. What new information did she have on Vaughn? Was it enough to bring him down once and for all? The diner was located on the outskirts of town, tucked away in a corner where the roads met and traffic was sparse. As he parked the car and walked up to the entrance, he could see Gonzalez already sitting in a booth by the window, her face tense as she watched the parking lot. Ethan approached her cautiously, sliding into the seat across from her. Any updates? He asked, his voice low. Gonzalez wasted no time. She handed him a folder, its contents sealed shut. This is what I've managed to dig up on Vaughn. It's not pretty, and it's not something I can reveal to the public just yet. But I need you to understand something. Vaughn isn't just a businessman. He's involved in some very dangerous activities, and he has connections that go deeper than we initially thought. Ethan's jaw tightened as he opened the folder, his eyes scanning the documents inside. There were records of illegal transactions, names of high-profile individuals, and even evidence of violent crimes. It was clear that Vaughn was a man who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. What does this mean for us? Ethan asked, his voice grim. Gonzalez leaned forward, her expression serious. "It means we need to be extremely careful. Vaughn has eyes and ears everywhere. He knows we're onto him, and he won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who gets in his way." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He knew the stakes were high, but he was determined to see this through. "What do we do next?" Gonzalez took a deep breath. "We need to gather more evidence. We need to build a case against him that's strong enough to take him down, but we have to do it quietly. We can't let him know we're coming for him." Ethan nodded, his resolve strengthening. "I understand. What do you need from me?" "I need you to stay with Lauren and the baby. Keep them safe. My team and I will handle the investigation. We'll find Vaughn and put an end to this." Ethan's mind raced. He knew he couldn't just sit back and do nothing, but he also knew that Lauren and the baby needed him. "Yeah, okay, I'll stay with them, but keep me updated. I need to know what's going on." Gonzalez nodded. "I will. Now go back to the safe house. Stay alert and be careful. We'll be in touch soon." Ethan left the diner, his mind heavy with the weight of the information he had just received. As he drove back to the safe house, he couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency. He needed to protect Lauren and the baby, and he needed to do it quickly. As Ethan pulled up to the safe house, he noticed that everything seemed quiet, too quiet. He parked the car and stepped out, his senses on high alert. The front door was slightly ajar and his heart skipped a beat. Something was wrong. He rushed inside, his eyes scanning the room. Lauren was nowhere to be seen, and the baby carrier was empty. Panic surged through him as he called out, "Lauren, where are you?" There was no response. He checked the bedrooms, the kitchen, and even the backyard, but there was no sign of Lauren or the baby. His heart raced as he pulled out his phone and dialed Detective Gonzalez. "Gonzalez, they're gone. Lauren and the baby are gone." The detective's voice was urgent. "Stay where you are. I'm on my way." Ethan paced the living room, his mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. Who could have taken them? Was it Vaughn? Had he found them already? The minutes felt like hours as he waited for Gonzalez to arrive. When the detective finally pulled up, she rushed into the house, her expression grave. "Tell me exactly what happened." Ethan explained everything, his voice trembling with worry. "I came back, and the door was open. Lauren and the baby were gone. I checked everywhere, but there's no sign of them." Gonzalez nodded, her mind already working through the possibilities. "We need to act fast. Vaughn must have found out where we were. We need to find Lauren and the baby before it's too late." Ethan's heart pounded in his chest. He knew they were running out of time. "What do we do?" Gonzalez pulled out her phone and started making calls. "I'll get a team on it. We'll track down any leads we can find. In the meantime, stay here. I'll be in touch as soon as I have more information." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. He couldn't just sit and wait. He needed to do something, anything, to find Lauren and the baby. As Gonzalez left, he paced the living room, his thoughts consumed by the danger they were in. He pulled out his phone and started making calls of his own. He reached out to old contacts, people he hadn't spoken to in years, anyone who might have information on Vaughn. He knew it was a long shot, but he had to try. Hours passed, and Ethan's anxiety grew with each passing minute. Finally, his phone rang. It was Gonzalez. "Ethan, we have a lead. We think we know where Vaughn is holding them. We're moving in now. Stay where you are. I'll keep you updated." Ethan's heart raced. He knew he couldn't just sit and wait. He had to be there, had to see this through to the end. He grabbed his keys and rushed out the door, determined to find Lauren and the baby and bring them home safely. Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of dread as the plan to confront Vaughn started taking shape. The days seemed to blend into one another as they prepared for the final confrontation, a game that felt increasingly dangerous with every passing hour. Despite Lauren's resolve, Ethan couldn't shake the anxiety that gnawed at him. The moment they decided to play Vaughn's game, everything had escalated beyond their control. They were no longer in charge of the situation. It was out of their hands. Lauren, despite her initial shock and fear, had become more determined with each conversation. She wasn't just a bystander anymore. She was an active participant in the fight. Her decision to take this path had been fueled by a combination of love for her child, a deep sense of justice, and a thirst to stop Vaughn before he could destroy more lives. Ethan admired her strength, but he also feared it would push her into the very heart of danger. On the morning of the planned operation, Ethan had trouble sleeping. He kept picturing Vaughn's face, the face of a man whose entire life seemed to be built on a foundation of lies, manipulation, and corruption. The idea of confronting him, knowing the man was capable of anything, sent shivers down his spine. But there was no going back now. The plan was set in motion, and he had to trust in the strategy they had devised, and most importantly, trust Lauren. When he arrived at the safe house, Lauren was already awake, her eyes filled with a mix of determination and fear. She held the baby close to her chest, her gaze steady as she looked at Ethan. "Are you ready for this?" Ethan asked softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Lauren nodded, her jaw set with resolve. "I have to be, for her." She glanced down at the baby, her eyes softening. "We can't let him win, Ethan. We have to end this." Ethan's heart swelled with pride and love. He reached out, taking her hand in his. "We will, together." Detective Gonzalez arrived a short while later, her expression serious. "We're all set. The team is in position, and we have eyes on Vaughn. He's at his warehouse downtown. We'll move in as soon as you're ready." Ethan nodded, his grip tightening on Lauren's hand. "Let's do this." The drive to the warehouse was tense. Ethan's mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, each one more urgent than the last. He glanced at Lauren, her face pale but determined. He knew she was scared, but he also knew she was strong. They had to see this through, no matter what. As they pulled up to the warehouse, Ethan could feel the weight of the moment settling over him. This was it, the final confrontation. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. Detective Gonzalez led the way, her team flanking them as they approached the entrance. The warehouse was quiet, the air thick with tension. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as they stepped inside, the dim light casting eerie shadows across the walls. Vaughn was waiting for them, his expression cold and calculating. He stood in the center of the room, his eyes locked on Lauren. "I knew you'd come," he said, his voice dripping with malice. Lauren stepped forward, her chin held high. "You can't hurt us anymore, Vaughn. It's over." Vaughn's lips curled into a sneer. "You think you can stop me? You're just a pawn in this game, Lauren. You always have been." Ethan's anger surged, but he kept his voice steady. "You're wrong, Vaughn. Lauren is stronger than you think, and we have the evidence to take you down." Vaughn's eyes narrowed, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "You're bluffing." Detective Gonzalez stepped forward, her voice firm. "We have everything we need, Vaughn. Your days of running are over. You're under arrest." Vaughn's face twisted with rage, but he knew he was cornered. The team moved in, surrounding him, their weapons drawn. Ethan watched as they cuffed Vaughn, a sense of relief washing over him. It was finally over. As they led Vaughn away, Ethan turned to Lauren, his heart swelling with love. "You did it, Lauren. You were so brave." Lauren's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "We did it, Ethan. Together." Ethan reached out, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Together," he whispered, his voice filled with emotion. As they stood there, hand in hand, Ethan knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. They had faced the darkness and come out stronger. Together, they would build a future filled with love, hope, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. The months that followed were a whirlwind of change. Vaughn was behind bars, his criminal empire dismantled. Ethan and Lauren worked tirelessly to rebuild their lives, focusing on their family and the future they wanted to create. Ethan stepped down from his position as CEO of Blackwood Technologies, handing the reins over to a trusted colleague. He wanted to spend more time with Lauren and their daughter, to be a present and loving father. Lauren, too, found a new purpose. She started a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping victims of crime, using her own experiences to inspire and support others. Their days were filled with laughter, love, and the simple joys of family life. They watched their daughter grow, her innocent face a constant reminder of the love that had brought them together. Ethan and Lauren knew that they had been given a second chance, and they were determined to make the most of it. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their cozy home, watching the sunset over the mountains, Ethan turned to Lauren, his eyes filled with love. "I never thought I could be this happy," he said softly. Lauren smiled, her hand reaching out to take his. "Neither did I, but I'm glad we found our way back to each other." Ethan's heart swelled with love. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Lauren, I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I want to build a future together, to grow old together, and to love you forever. Will you marry me?" Lauren's eyes filled with tears of joy. "Yes, Ethan. Yes, I'll marry you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Ethan knew that their love story was just beginning. Together, they would face whatever challenges came their way, hand in hand, with love and courage. And as they kissed under the setting sun, they knew that their future was bright, filled with hope and endless possibilities. Thank you for staying with us through this unforgettable journey, a story of redemption, second chances, and a love that was born not in perfection but in healing. If Ethan and Lauren's story touched your heart, reminded you that people can change, that wounds can heal, and that love often finds us in the most unexpected places, please show your support. Like this story if it touched your heart. Share it with friends and family who love a good romance. Subscribe to stay updated with more captivating stories like this one. Your support means the world to us. Stay tuned for more emotional and engaging tales.